a very warm welcome to all of you. Just the evening before Holi, so Holi की बहुत बहुत शुभकामनाएं आप सबको. Are you all playing?
Yes. We are playing with words.
That's a good one. That's the right way to start this evening. So, yet another episode of Right Circle presented by Sri Cements in association with Prabha Ketan Foundation, Ehsaas Women of Jaipur and Spaggia Foundation, and of course Siahi. We have someone that I have admired from a distance and have been awestruck for a very, very long, I'm talking about a few years, and literally gathered up the courage to invite Akshay, wondering whether he's going to say yes or no, because you know जो लोग होते हैं जो दूसरों की ज़िंदगी के बारे में लिखते हैं and वो इतनी deep research करते हैं, उनमें इतना ठहराव होगा. I was wondering, I said, हमारी छोटी सी event में आएंगे नहीं आएंगे, but thank you so much Akshay for joining us, and I really mean that. It was, and thanks to Tamanna actually. So he's the author of Gita Press and the Making of Hindu India, which won several non-fiction awards, and on its release, which includes the Crossword Book Award, the Ramnath Goenka Award, the Tata Lit Live Award, Ata Galata, Shakti Bhatt. So that's practically all the awards in India. If it was JCB and they gave a non-fiction prize, it would have won that also. So, and he's contributed a lot of essays to Keywords for India, Conceptual Lexicon for the 21st Century, and a couple of other, and another essay to A Functioning Anarchy, essays for Ramchandra Guha. So, okay, that's a lot. And his latest book is what we are going to be talking about today, among other things, among his entire writing career. In conversation with him is Tamanna Bhenoth, who's a copy editor and a lactation counselor with a background in molecular biology. She has been teaching and learning from children and young adults for over 11 years now. She's also headed the production team for us, for Women Up Summit, and also worked with us for the Mountain Echoes Festival in Bhutan. She's also publishing a paper called The Pink Bus, and she is also the grandniece of Sachidananda, Vatsana and Agaya. So you can get the connection now, which is why I said another thank you to her. With that, I'm going to invite Akshay and Tamanna both on stage and hand over the evening to them. Please do keep your cell phones on silent, and if you don't know how to do that, ask your neighbor to help you. Please. Guys, what's happening? Where's the energy?
So much for being with us. So yeah, like Meeta mentioned, I'm related to Agayji, but I got to know a lot about his life more through the book and talking with Akshayji. So my first question is, when did you first read anything by him?
Actually I read him first when I was maybe 16, and Sekhar, when you read at the age of 16, it completely blows you. It's like you start thinking, what have you done with your life? You know, at 16 as it is, there are too many existential questions when you are at that age. And here is a man, everyone knew that it's autobiographical, and it's about his life when as a revolutionary he's in jail, and there is this whole fear that he might get death sentence. And it's all written out of dream, a series of dreams put together. So that's when I kind of read him, and many years later I read his Nadi Ke Dui, which I like more now. I read Sekhar, which I had to read again and again while writing the book. I realized that I like Nadi Ke Dui more now. It's an age thing, at 16, 18, that's the book, Sekhar to read, you know. So that's how, and then slowly poems and all, and that's how. So it became one of my favorites. Yeah.
Can we have a show of hands as to how many of us read anything by Agayji? Or we're familiar, yeah. Yeah, so I first read a poem by him in my CBSE book, and then my Hindi teacher that said that if you're distantly related, you have to perform very well in Hindi, which I don't know if it worked out. But yeah, there's so much in the book. So Shekhar-e Jeevani is a semi-autobiographical book, and I believe the third edition is missing or lost somewhere.
Again, when the second volume came sometime in the mid-40s, first one came in 41, and again kept everyone guessing. And I think after a point he started enjoying this game. So he'll tell everyone, oh, third volume is ready. And people will say, when will it come? Oh, it will come. I'm editing it. It never came. I have gone through those 80,000 pages of his private papers. It's not there. Nobody, his last partner, Ila Dalmia, she never saw it. Nand Kishore Acharya, who's from Rajasthan, he said that maybe it's kept somewhere, he gave it to someone. So that, that mystique, like Agge, there is a mystique about Shekhar-e Jeevani also, nobody knows. And 86, year before he died, which was his 75th anniversary, there was a big show in Delhi. And again, he told Prayag Sokul that, it's there, it's not ready, now I think the whole thing needs to change. So he kept that game guessing, and I could make out he was enjoying it basically. He was keeping everyone on their toes, waiting for this book which never happened.
Yeah. So his real name his given name was Sachidanand Vatsyayan, and Agge was a pen name. So will you tell us what it was about and how it came?
Agge, he already had a big name, Sachidanand Hiranand Vatsyayan. But as a revolutionary, when he went to jail at the age of 19 or so, in Lahore, and he has spent good 4 years in jail, and that's when his writing career took off. And another Hindi writer, Janendra Kumar, who was very close to one of the other inmate, who was friends, who was also there as part of a revolutionary activity, Bimal Prasad Jain. So he told Janendra that he has written some story, and 2 stories were smuggled out. 2 stories were shown to Premchand. Premchand said that, look, if I publish the first story, you will have to give me money because British government is going to confiscate my press. Those days he was running Jagran, which was a weekly. Then the other story, which was Amar Vallari, he said, okay, I'll publish it, but who's the author? His name couldn't have gone because he was in jail. So Janendra said, Agge hai Agge. So he published it as Sri Yut Agge. Amar Vallari came in Jagran. So that got stuck, and Agge never liked it. He said, what is this? As it is, I have a name, pompous, big name, and then at the end of you call me Agge, unknowable. So how is it possible? Sachidanand, Hiranand, Vatsyayan, and then you call me unknowable, Agge. So it got stuck. He couldn't do anything. World knows him more as Agge than the full name, Sachidanand, Hiranand, Vatsyayan. Yeah.
So the book has, so this is the title, right? Writer, rebel, soldier, lover. So about the soldier and rebel part, would you like to tell us a little about that?
Soldier, I'll first, rebel part, yeah. Rebel is, he, like the whole, his entire generation of Hindi writers, even subsequent generations, he was the most cosmopolitan because he was growing up all over India. So he was born in an open field in Kusinagar, because father was a leading archaeologist and epigraphist, Hiranand Sastri, who was that time digging in Kusinagar, and he was born. And father's job took him all over the place. He lands in, so he does the intermediate, those days intermediate, which was now we call +2. And he went to Madras Christian College. And from there he comes straight to Foreman Christian College in Lahore to do BSc. And the entire family had a tradition of homeschooling. They all appeared as private candidates in class 10th. All his brothers, all the 10 of them, they were all sent homeschooled. So there in Lahore he wanted to be a physicist, and he was research assistant to one of the great physicists of that time, friend of Andrew Compton, Professor Bernard. But he did 3rd division in BSc, and that's the time when he started hobnobbing with his HSRA people, Hindustan Socialist Republican Association, Chandrasekhar Azad. Bhagat Singh was already in jail, and they started doing this pamphlets, distributing pamphlets and all. And slowly his kind of interest in science, for some reason or the other, he became a bomb expert. So his name was scientist in that circle of revolutionaries, and that's how he comes from. He's brought to Delhi to make bombs, and they had a factory in Delhi, which is Jhandewala, and people have seen till 60s that board. They used to have this thing called Hindustan Soap Factory. They were saying that we are making actually soap, they were making bombs. And one thing led to the other, and the entire network got exposed. He spent 4 years in jail. And even after he come out of jail, he goes to jail sometime in late 1929, he comes out in 33. And after that, for good almost 2 years, he's in Lahore and he's not allowed to step out of the particular place, his locality, his neighborhood. Every time he has to go to another neighborhood, he has to seek police permission. Only thing was he was allowed to go for some reason to Dalhousie, where family will go for vacation, but not there. C.F. Andrews actually helped him come out of it. C.F. Andrews, with his connection with the colonial government, got him out, and that's how he landed in Agra. So that's the rebel part. But although it was like good 5 years, but it stayed with him. That gave him his first novel. That gave him so much. He kept talking about it. There's so early poems, everything. So the rebel stick never went. And he, I think sometime in the 70s, Duke University was doing a big archival interview with him, and they asked, "What do you want to be remembered as?" He said, "I want to be remembered as an anarchist," and that's what he was. So the rebel part never went from him, and it kept reflecting. He was no longer making bombs, but he was always going against the grain, everything that he did. So rebel streak remained in him, yeah. And as for the soldier part, this is actually one of the many contradictions of Agge. Agge is full of contradictions, and every time people will point out, he'll quote Walt Whitman and say that, "Look, I contain multitudes." So this happens that man who was a revolutionary in the late 20s, 30s, how does he join British government as a soldier in the 40s during the Second World War? And everyone, the Marxists, called him a stooge, a British stooge. They said, who does that? And if you see, actually, he creates a whole logic around it. He says, look, British government is our enemy, but the larger enemy is the fascism, the rising tide of fascism. So we have to deal with that. And his author's job is not merely to write, but to participate. And that's when he joins British Army. And that's the time when he's also having an intense affair with a 1 year long affair with this absolutely brilliant woman called Kripa Sen, who's telling him not to join. She tells him, well, if fools go to army, why will a writer go to army? What will you take orders? But he's very clear he wants to join army. And in fact, if you read his novel Nadi Ke Dweep, which is also in translation, a bad translation done by Agge, called Islands in the Stream, you will find that he gives a whole explanation. But communists never kind of let him, they always reminded him that you were a British stooge. So, but then that's Agge for you, his contradictions, multitudes, whatever you want to call it. So that's how that's the kind of the soldier part of it, yeah.
Yeah, there's so much turmoil. In fact, a lot of the phrase that it's real life is stranger than fiction. So when I was reading the book, I kept wondering, really, if this happened, like I think there's a movie waiting to be to be made on this, or maybe OTT or something. Because I think all of us are leading very regular lives, like he was doing something or the other all the time, and something controversial. It's maybe we need to do that to be written about, right?
No, I won't say that's how he was. See, he's everything. Look at his personal life. He's having a kind of, I don't know whether to call it an affair or anything, but an intense relationship with his own cousin, which comes in Sekhar Ek Jeevani, which I thought was fictional, but only when you see the papers, you realize it's real. He's having an affair. That cost him 2 more relationships when he gets married to first wife Santosh, who is Balraj Sahni's cousin and later Balraj Sahni's wife. Again, Santosh got married, and Santosh says that, look, this marriage will never work because there is this cousin of yours. And again, he falls in love with another lady, Kripa Sen. Kripa says that, look, again, your cousin is there. So he's doing things whole world knows. So he had that streak in him. I don't know whether he was doing it deliberately. I don't think so. That's how he was made over everything. Even in his writings, he's very different. You know, Marxists are attacking him, but the first anthology of Hindi poetry, which is a modern Hindi poetry called Tar Saptak, it's called a septet. The first of it comes where he gives 5 of the 7 poets are Marxists. And he gets attacked for that again. Then he does Dusra Saptak and Tisra Saptak, which keeps coming after a few years. So he goes against the grain all the time. He does things, he contradicts himself all the time, but then that's how he was. I don't think much of it was deliberate. Yes, later on he'll pick up fights with people deliberately because, there is a whole phase of Agge which happens with everyone, that there is a phase of prophet when he surrounded himself with very ordinary writers, yes men, and that's when you find that even his writing is not what it used to be in the 50s, 60s, and even early 70s. That suffers a lot, yeah.
So Akshayji had mentioned earlier that we touched upon the women in his life and the relationships. So, but all the women seem to be miserable, but they still want to be with him, right? So we have to maybe address that. Like, how does that work? So they're all miserable. At some point he loves them, and then he just kind of phases out and finds somebody else. But they all want to, I think the second wife, she continued to be his wife and he was still living in a home with somebody else.
Yeah.
So that was
so Agge was, as he called himself Yayavar, he moved from one place to another. That's what he did in relationships. He was itinerant even in his relationships. Many women at the same time. And what you find is that all these women without fail are remarkable women, very successful with a mind of their own. They're not women who are just there to listen to you. They're all achievers. Santosh turned out to be a playwright. Kapila Vatsyayan, all of us know about her. Kripa herself was his lover, and she's the only one who had to abort his child. And but these remarkable women with a mind of them, what was it about Agge? One doesn't know. I asked one very famous psychologist who was very well known, and he said, listen, don't psychoanalyze him, you do biography, because you won't get it. Because there are men like this. And all women without fail are miserable in relationship. So much so that 87 he dies, there is a letter by his last partner, Ila Dalmia, who comes from a very big family, 33 years younger to him. And she's writing to him that, look, I will do whatever you tell me. If you want me, I'll keep my mouth shut. There was no reason any woman would do something like this because she was very successful, she was helping him out. And most of these women were also so Agge is very extractive in relationships, not only emotionally, even these women are also taking care of him. They're taking care of him in every which way. He had a very tasteful life, very elegant life, many of which was taken care by these women. And they were all Kapila was a senior government officer, Santosh came from a well-off family. And within weeks of marriage, he's saying, sell off my jewelry, but buy land if you want to, but be happy, do whatever you want to. So these women are sacrificing, yet they're miserable. He doesn't. He writes one essay about women. He doesn't say, and he makes one of the things which I never understood. He wrote that women lack sense of humor. He wrote. So with women, it's a very difficult territory for Agge. He's also very close to them. All the women, and there are a number of other women whom I spoke to who saw him. All of them said that, look, we don't know what was about him because I've asked this to women. One woman could come close to it. She again comes from a very big industrialist family. She said, for the time that he spoke to you, you felt this, no man could give that kind of respect or pay attention or could listen. He was a great listener. And all women you talk to in this room, everyone will say, men don't listen. Men only talk, right? So Agge had that quality in him. But it worked, but he made many women miserable. Yeah.
And I think his relationship with his mother was also complicated.
That was problematic because mother is someone, imagine a lady having 10 children and 1 or 2 had died. So for better part of life, she was only expecting children, right? And then how do you run a family with 10 children and a husband who's constantly moving, who has a temper issue? And so Akke is never close to his mother. In fact, it's probably rare author you find who the mother doesn't appear too much. In fact, when his mother dies, and just when he's in Lahore, he writes a letter to Jainendra Kumar saying that the third para of the letter, that by the way, mother died. And Jainendra freaks out. He said, what is wrong with you, man? Your mother has died and you're putting it in the third para or something. So it was just a matter of fact. He never talks. And he says that mother was very tough with him, with children. Because how do you keep a brood of 10 children? It's not easy. Just imagine any woman to take care of 10 children. It's not easy. Cooking, taking care of children. So maybe she was harsh, but it was a very problematic relationship. A lot of people try to analyze his problems with women through the prism of mother because he was never got mother's love. I don't know all that. I don't understand psychology, but yeah, it was problematic when it came to women and mother, definitely.
Yeah, so like on a personal front, I was always told, oh, your great granddad was Hiranand Shastri, but his wife's name was never, like I never knew it, I only read it in the book.
Yeah,
right? So this wife is the one who's given birth to Agge, to my grandfather and 8 other children. But her name was never, like my whole life I've not known her name, I only got to know through the book. Yeah. So this is the other book that Akshayji has written before this one. Again, this is also a mammoth of a book with lots of references and citations, and it's about the Gita Press. So we'll quickly touch a little bit about this.
Yeah.
And when I read it, so many things were shocking. He already told me that don't be shocked. Yes, they used to write these kind of things. So he's going to tell us. So what was the Gita Press earlier and what is it now?
Gita Press, what it was earlier and what it is now, it's not changed. It's maintained that continuity comes first time. Gita Press as an establishment comes in 1923 with publication of Gita, because Jayadayal Goenka, who was the brain behind it, he always said there are no good summary of Gita. So he starts printing it in Calcutta first, then moves to Gorakhpur, and in 1926, that's when they come of age, is they start this journal called Kalyan, which continues even now. It's one of the longest surviving religious stroke spiritual journal, and it always says, even now if you pick up Kalyan, you will say Bhakti, Gyan or Vairagya ka Masik. But at all flashpoints of history, right from 1926 onwards, you will find they have sided with the Hindu nationalist groups, which means RSS, Hindu Mahasabha, everyone. Be it in the temple entry movement of the early 30s, there is a whole debate between Gandhi and Hanuman Prasad Poddar, who was the editor of Kalyan for good almost 45 years. And he's constantly reminding Gandhi that why have you changed your position? Where at one point you were against interdining and temple entry, why have you changed your position? And Gandhi says that, well, I'm evolving, I'm changing, yes, I had a position. So, and by 40s we find Gita Press has become a kind of spokesperson for the strident Hindu nationalism, because be it RSS or Hindu Mahasabha, their journals could not reach ordinary Hindu homes. Kalyan's speciality was it could reach ordinary Hindu homes. Your grandmother is reading, your mother is reading, people are reading, people still, if you want to know the celestial positions, kab vrat hai, kab upvas rakhna hai, everything Kalyan tells you. And it's like, is din ye amavasya hai, whatever, it's a very ritualistic world that it represents. So it was being read by everyone, and not everyone who was reading was communal. That I want to make it very clear. But they could get their message across through Kalyan. And 40s, you completely forgot that Kalyan ever was a Bhakti, Gyan or Vairagya ka Masik. It's only, so it becomes very strident, it's attacking this whole, creation of Pakistan, Muslim League, Gandhi, Nehru is constantly attacked. Post 47, you find every election till 2014 election that I've tracked, 2019 I didn't, because by then book was over and I was not taking too much interest, is that every election they make this appeal. And they will not say that, you vote for X or Z party. All they will tell you is that vote for a party which bans cow slaughter, which brings uniform civil code. And finally, when this cow slaughter thing happened in 2014, when many states start banning, For Gita Press, it was like a sense of this thing that, look, this has happened. We are almost near to making of the Hindu India that we wanted. And the thing is that, these are the organizations. When a lot of people ask why, what is happening in India now, it's not happened overnight. These organizations like Gita Press and many others, they are in the building blocks of larger Hindu nationalism. They have played a key role, which people in big cities and academia and media didn't understand. But that's how it was happening. And they have played a very, very big role, and they continue to. And now they are over 100 years in 1923, yeah. So 26, there have big celebration lined up for Kalyan. It's probably all the journals, contemporary journals of that time, have all closed down. Gita Press continues, yeah.
So in this book, there's also a lot of lists at how women should behave and how they should treat their male child, and all of that, of course, was shocking for me to read. And of course, men are writing this, right? And it still continues, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah.
See, there are 2-3 basic things. Template of Gita Press is about cows, about women. Cows, women, they are very bothered. And it's basically, it's for them, woman's sexuality is entirely man's business. So what happens, what she does, what if she's a widow, this whole list of, prescriptions to this. And in 1926, can you believe it, they brought out a 42-page pamphlet called Stri Dharam Prashnottari, which is a conversation between Sarla the simpleton and Savitri the knowledgeable. And Sarla is constantly asking, kya karun, is mahol mein kya karna chahiye, usme kya karna chahiye. And that has been sold almost 14 lakh copies. It continues to be in print. So someone somewhere is reading it. In 1946 or something, they brought out Stri Nari Ang. If you read it, I'm sure all the women in this room across generations are going to kill me if I start. There are kind of things about women's sexuality, why justification of sati, till in fact they came up with a very serious, they tried to give it a very scientific twist to sati by saying how some, thyroxine, or, when a woman loses a husband, the discharge of thyroxine in her body increases, and that's how she burns herself. Nobody burns. All kinds of mumbo jumbo is there, and it continues. So it created a very obscurantist world, very traditional world, but at the same time it brought great religious texts. And so there are sides to it. There is a whole spiritual side where Gita Press brought you Mahabharata. And Mahabharata version that Gita Press has was not brought out like overnight. In fact, it's very little known that for a few months or for maybe 2 years, they brought out a separate journal called Mahabharata, where they got scholars from all over the world, including Bhandarkar Oriental Research Institute, to discuss it and come to some consensus, and then they brought out. So in fact, I know people in US and very scholars who have been working on Gita Press's version of Mahabharata. So there is that whole side to it. I can safely say that in everyone's house, any religious text we have, Ramayana, anything, is from Gita Press. They took God, religion to ordinary masses. But the other side was, while they distributed the Ramayana Gutka, or the Hanuman Chalisa and everything, they were also against entry of Dalits to temples. So for them it was that you've got the text, you read it at home, you don't have to enter temple. So there was this multiple worlds, traditional world that they inhabited, and they continue to do so. Kalyan, there's not an issue of Kalyan, where even now you don't find articles by old, they keep recycling. There are very few new writers. Keep recycling Hanuman Prasad Podar and Jayadayan Goenka's article. And so it continues, it has great following, it has a circulation of almost 3 lakhs every month, and then they have Kalyan Kalpataru. You have to give it to them, they were ahead of everyone in thinking that there is a diaspora that needs to be addressed, and Hindu gods and goddesses had to be taken to them. So in 1934, they started Kalyan Kalpataru, which is English, and I know a very big American writer who was of Jamaican origin. She told me that's how she read it at her home. grandmother or great grandmother introduced all the religious texts to which all Gita Press and Kalyan Kalpataru. Kalyan Kalpataru continues, so does Kalyan. So it's a remarkable in terms of what they have done. Is remarkable, and they also got the kind of people who wrote for Gita Kalyan is from Premchand Road. Premchand Road. Nirala, Hanuman Prasad Poddar could convince anyone to write. So some of the biggest scholars from West wrote. Gandhi wrote. Malviya wrote. Everyone wrote. He was very close to Gandhi. And later on, I think probably Nehru is the only one who didn't write, despite he trying to get him to write. Nehru didn't write because he was not much into all this. So he created that world which has many shades to it. But the larger thing was creating this Hindu unity, become the sole spokesperson of the Hindus. And that's what he said in the very first editorial when he calls us Sangbal and says that Muslims are doing better because, they have Sangbal, we lack that. We have Chappan Karor Devi Devta, which doesn't work for us. We need to speak in one voice. So it's a great contribution they made to the larger cause, and we are seeing it now.
What about facing resistance, like either with this book or our sources, were they forthcoming for the other book?
Gita Press, yes, organizer did a full page on me. Then Panchanya did something, 2 pages, organizer did 1 page. But Panchanya has been very kind to me earlier also. It called me ISI Giant when I was journalist. So it's okay. So it's been a part of the journey. And they had a blog those days, which is closed since, called Niti Central. So they reviewed the book, and it's probably the only review I have read, and I read a lot of book reviews across Indian and foreign journals. The entire review was on the acknowledgement part of the book, and it said a grand conspiracy was hatched to do the book and all that, the usual thing. But they also said, well, this is research. So finally, so there was a fear there will be court case and all. Nothing happened, to be fair, nothing happened. And one thing, as someone in the RSS told me, the best thing is if you do more court cases, you give more prominence to it. So just ignore it. So that's what. So it got royally ignored, but yeah, some bit, yeah.
And both the books have a lot of references, right? Because he's writing about somebody's book, like a publication house and somebody's life. So all of it has very solid references. Now, how does that happen? Because I think 1/5, like this is quite a large, long book.
200 pages are
references.
Yeah.
And each reference, so even that was something which is very admirable. So something that maybe you can tell us a little bit about that process, or how does that work?
Yeah, basically book writing for me has become like an undergraduate program. Almost 4 years it takes, so it's like I've done twice now undergraduation. So what happens with Aghay, what happened, there is many myths about Aghay. And people who love him, people who don't love him. Both sides. For instance, 2-3 things. For instance, he being a British agent for joining army, and then you find one of his co-soldier, British communist, Sidney Bold, wrote a fascinating account, a book, which says something else. Then about his revolutionary years, people have written all kinds of things without realizing the 1,500 pages were lying in archives, in Delhi State Archives and National Archives, which gives a very different picture. Similarly about his love life. So I relied entirely on his papers. There were long gaps. For instance, he's also called a CIA agent. Yes, he was a part of Congress for Cultural Freedom, started in 1915 in Berlin, and the 1951 meeting in India, he was a key organizer, and he got to know everyone. And so that was also a period when Americans were paranoid about rising tide of communism, and they were funding things left, right and center. So in India there's a journal, many of you people are from Bombay or that generation remember, there was a very prestigious journal called Quest, which was entirely funded by them. So that bit took me a lot of time. So I had to travel, for instance, a lot of these papers are in Chicago archives, some bit is in Stanford archives, some bit is in Texas, Austin archives. So that bit, just to put things, plug the loopholes in the story. So I had to do it because it's easy to fall prey to these insinuations and everything. So I've written, and nobody knew that he had to leave that Congress for Cultural Freedom because the allegation of diversion of $1,000, huge money those days, even now, was leveled against him, and he had to leave. They threw him out. Minu Masani and others threw him out, but he kept close contact with all the key people. For instance, Vladimir Nabokov's cousin, Nicholas Nabokov, who was a big American musician, with him. Then another American philosopher, James Burnham. So all those things he kept in touch with. So to say that he was a CIA, lifelong CIA agent who was into some divisive activities, well, you have seen the larger perspective. The irony is that while a lot has been written on the so-called CIA agents, writers, poets, painters, very little, a parallel funding was happening from USSR. You had Soviet Land Awards given to Indian writers. Balraj Sahni went there. Parikshit Sahni, in fact, did his entire film education in Moscow. So very little is getting written about the other side. Yes, this was happening, this continued till late, and it even involved Jayaprakash Narayan, which kind of completely in the mid-70s when New York Times did the story. By then, Agay had left, Agay was no longer part of it. But yes, it affected a lot of people, and all those things took a lot of time because in case of what happened even with personal relationships, I realized I did some 60 interviews, and that I realized later that I wasted time. So people were still trying to fix him after his death. People were telling you things which didn't happen. Only two people stood out. One was Krishna Sokti at the age of 93, still not speak a word which didn't happen, and you could cross-check it with facts and provide you those things. And there was another poet, Bhuvan Narayan, who never, and a gentleman, many of you would have known him, he was from Jaipur, Mukund Lath. I miss him so much, yes. So Mukund Lath was another, kind of, he was my kind of I owe so many things to him. And Mukund Lath is the only one who will always say, I'm in the third row of the Agay's fan. And I was not this. He will never talk much, whereas Agay was very close to him. And Mukund Lath also never exaggerated, neither went out of the way to demolish him. So these things put together takes time. So yeah, and as it is, I procrastinate a lot, so everything, 5 years.
I think so. Akshayji had mentioned one that in India we have a habit of if somebody is no more, then you always have to say positive things, right? Because ab wo nahi hai. So the book is not that. Of course, there's a lot of positive things to say, but it's real because everything is backed up with this reference, that letter, and there was so much letter writing. We were just discussing it at coffee. That I think they were perpetually just, oh, this happened, let me write a letter to so and so. That happened, so and he was not replying to too many letters.
That Agay was known, he was everyone called him Chuppa, he'll not reply, and including the woman who loved him the most this Kripa Sen. And she was the only one who will tell him, listen, if you continue to do this, I'll fix you, you can't I write 10 letters, and she was she had almost OCD about writing letters. She'll write him one love letter in the morning, one after breakfast, and one at the night. And all three letters would be completely different from each other. And she could quote from Persian, Urdu, verses from Negro literature, all kinds of things. So, and Agay, who was known not to reply to one letter, he couldn't figure out what is wrong with his woman. She writes 3 love letters and expects me to respond every day. So he'll not write. So their love life is also about her constant bickering that you don't write to me. And he is like, to her 20 letters he'll write 1. So that's what Agay, and that's what he used to do with fellow writers, everyone. Everyone will see never reply. So even then, despite all this, you find thousands and thousands of letters of Agay in his papers.
At one point I read that he's telling his current wife, he's somewhere abroad with another lady, telling his current wife to forward his mail there. Yeah. And the wife is complying that yes, I will do that. Yeah. And all over wherever he goes with the other lady, she's just forwarding his Maybe.
That was time when he kind of leaves. I mean, he goes to US to teach. He taught in Berkeley and set up the Department of Rhetoric and Languages. And that's when he had met Ela already in Delhi. She came from big Dalmia family, and she was the youngest, not the youngest, she was probably the eldest of Ramakrishna Dalmia's, I think, third or fourth wife. And she joins him there, and Kapila is completely unaware of what's happening. And then he writes to her saying that, look, and she's the one forwarding letters, forget letters, she's even forwarding him newspapers, Indian newspapers to Berkeley. And finally he writes to her, listen, I'm coming back, but I'm not coming home. I'm going somewhere else in Delhi, and I'm not alone, and you know that already. And even after he moves to another house, which is Premchand's son's house in Hoj Khas in Delhi, she's the one who's still forwarding him letters, and that's the time when he starts teaching in Jodhpur. Jodhpur had a great time. That time was a very big one, Mr. John, who was very well known writer, and B.B. John. B.B. John was the vice chancellor, and he wanted to create a world-class university in Jodhpur, and he got people from some of the best minds. But the local politics and this whole thing that some of the soils would get job led to complete disaster, and within a year everyone started leaving. Otherwise Jodhpur would have been one of the biggest universities, one of the best in India now. The way B.B. John had kind of had vision. So again came here to set up the department. Yeah.
So maybe you can read something for us by Agge before we go for questions, Meeta?
Maybe a poem which is kind of it's a slightly old poem, and it's 1936, so you can see a very different Agge. Is less melancholic, although he is that you cannot separate melancholy from him. This is a poem called पूछ लूँ मैं नाम तेरा, मिलन रजनी हो चुकी विच्छेद का भय सवेरा, जा रहा हूँ और कितनी देर अब विश्राम होगा, तू सदैव है किंतु तुझको और भी तो काम होगा, प्यार का साथी बनाता विघ्न बनने तक रुकूं क्यों, समझ ले स्वीकार कर ले यह कृतज्ञ प्रणाम मेरा, और होगा मूर्ख जिसने चीर मिलन की आस पाली, पा चुका अपना चुका है कौन ऐसा भाग्यशाली, इस दरिद्र को बांध लेना देव से मैंने न मांगा, मूर्ख उतना हूँ नहीं इतना नहीं है भाग्य मेरा, श्वास की है दो क्रियाएं खींचना फिर छोड़ देना, कब भला संभव हमें इस अनुक्रम को तोड़ देना, श्वास की उस संधि सा इस जगत में प्यार का पल, रुक सकेगा कौन कब तक बीच पथ में डाल डेरा, घूमते हैं गगन में जो दिखते स्वच्छंद तारे, एक आंचल में पड़े भी अलग रहते हैं बेचारे, भूल से पल भर भूले छू जाएं उनकी मेखलाएं, दास मैं भी हूँ नियति का क्या भला विश्वास मेरा, प्रेम की चिर ऐक्य कोई मूड होगा तो कहेगा, विरह की पीड़ा न हो तो प्रेम क्या जीता रहेगा, जो सदा बांधे रहे वह एक कारावास होगा, घर वही है जो थके को रैन भर का हो बसेरा, प्रकृत है अनुभूति है वह रसदायिनी निष्पाप भी है, मार्ग उसका रोकना ही पाप भी है साप भी है, मिलन हो मुख चूम ले आई विदा ले राह अपनी, मैं न पूछूं तुम न जानो क्या रहा अंजाम मेरा, रात बीती यद्यपि उसमें संग भी था रंग भी था, अलस अंगों में हमारे स्फुर्त एक अनंग भी था, तीन की उस एकता में प्रलय ने तांडव किया था, सृष्टि भर को एक क्षण भर बाहों ने बांध घेरा, सोच मत यह प्रश्न क्यों जब अलग ही हैं मार्ग अपने, सच नहीं होते इसी से भूलता है कौन सपने, मोह हमको है नहीं द्वार आशा का खुला है, क्या पता फिर सामने हो जाए तेरा और मेरा, कौन हम तुम दुख सुख होते रहेंगे, जानकर परिचय परस्पर हम किसे जाकर कहेंगे, पूछता है क्योंकि आगे जानता हूँ क्या बता है, प्रेम जग का और केवल नाम तेरा, पूछ लूँ मैं नाम तेरा, मिलन रजनी हो चुकी विच्छेद का भय सवेरा.
So I think we'll take a few questions from the audience. And the book also has a lot of his.
I just had a little thing to ask. You read that poem, विच्छेद का है सवेरा. मुझे तो लगता है आपको नहीं लगा कि इसी में आगे दिख जाते हैं.
हाँ.
ये उनको लग जाता है कि कोई भी चीज़ परमानेंट नहीं है.
हाँ.
और वो तोड़ने में पहले ही तैयार है. आपको ऐसा नहीं लगा?
एकदम
एंड
सही
द
है।
अदर थिंग दैट आई फील, मैं उनके उस एक घर में दिल्ली में गई हुई हूँ,
अच्छा, कौन से वाले में?
जो सेंट्रल दिल्ली में था, शायद कपिला जी के साथ थे
हाँ,
तब।
वो वहाँ पे
हाँ।
चाणक्यपुरी में।
हाँ हाँ
जी,
हाँ,
जी।
तो बहुत समय की बात है।
हाँ।
पर जो मैं सोचती हूँ, जो मुझे लगता है कि वोंट यू कॉल हिम careless, selfish, and a
Yes.
Casanova, and a
Yeah.
Casanova to my mind.
I call him
Philosophical
extractive.
Casanova, you know.
I call him extractive. You know, Casanova, and always looking very brooding, yet he's kind of has a very different thing. See, he's not your classical Casanova, you know. But yeah, he is extractive in relationships, whoever, with women, definitely. Yeah.
But like Akshayji said, maybe not intentive, he's not doing that on purpose, that's how he is.
I think very shrewd, quiet.
Yeah,
very
could
shrewd
be.
and
Yeah,
quiet.
yeah, you can say that.
Manipulating.
So this is this. I'll read a bit of here and there from his intense love affair with Kripa Sen. This is about the time when there's this early courtship days, and she's telling him she's complete bohemian. She's ahead of her time. She's a remarkable woman, very pretty, very a mind of her own. She's telling him immediately after they meet, and they realize that she's fallen in love head over heels. She's telling him to go on a holiday with him to hills. Mind you, this is early 19, this is 41. While Kripa was dreaming of a thatched hut in the Kumaon somewhere away from human beings, Krishan, so she had many suitors. Krishan Chandra was one of them. And she always kind of made fun of him, he's ugly looking guy and all that. So that's a portion. Krishan was annoyed at having unwittingly played Cupid. In a jocular letter to Agay, annotated with interjections from Kripa, Krishan said that he was quickly tiring of being absurdly good, a polite way of saying what a complete duffer and a perfect nincompoop you are. He decided it was better to be terribly malicious, nasty, maligning individual. Conceding that he could not compete with Agay when it came to winning the affections of women, he wrote, "Being a woman hater, it gives you an advantage over me. The men like you because you are a woman hater, and the women adore you well because you are a woman hater again." Acknowledging certain defeat, he threatened to launch extensive and intensive propaganda against Agay and his new beard. He even produced a few remarks culled from the conversation of the Lucknow bourgeois, and this is a conversation which he reproduces from Lucknow coffee house. "Oh, how charming he looks in his beard. Isn't he sweet? Darling, did you see that artist sitting on that coffee table? No, not that. That is Mr. K, Mr. Krishan Chandra, a program assistant of AIR, a horrible looking morose boor. No, the other charming young man with a beard sitting next to him. Oh, how perfectly lovely." Then the kind of affair kind of gets on, and then they invade Sun, and she's a kind of woman who demands extreme attention from him. And by then, they'd come close in terms of writing letters and all. The two drew closer after the visit. One visit she made to Delhi. Having become acquainted with Agay's room in civil lines and his work routine, Kripa was even more smitten than before. On the endless and interminable train journey back in Lucknow, she was sick with reminiscences of how tenderly you stroked my hair and gently kissed my eyes. She was also literally unwell. "My lungs are worse and I can hardly breathe. I have high fever and the palms and soles burn like fire, but still I'm happy. At peace is the proper word, and you brought on this peace, Maharaj." She scribbled. A Hindi poem he had recited for her still rang in her ears. She and Agay had formulated some private jokes during their tryst. Looking at families with 5 or 6 children in a compartment, Kripa wrote, "I wonder at the fertility, and that reminds me of our little horticultural joke." And the next time they met, she promised she would have him closeted in a room, his feet encased in an ice box with Loki, which is bottle gourd, puree, and as an antidote, glasses of port wine splashed down your throat. My poor boy, what a prospect ahead of you. But still, again, all these love letters he's writing, but again, still kind of going haywire, not saying it in so many words. She wondered though what again felt for her. My dear, not once did you tell me what you exactly felt for me. Is it love or affection? Is it pity? Is it sympathy? What is it? I told you I had a question to ask, but I could not find words nor muster courage to dare ask. I find I am so sigh with you. In writing, she was able to confess to dreaming of a life with a rich and prosperous ex-soldier and ask more direct questions such as, do you like my face? Do you like my eyes, my nose, my lips, my chin, my hair? What is it that you like about me? I am so curious to know, and do you think I am too fat? This is my woman's vanity speaking, and it's time I choke. Then, she'll do very strange things. For instance, if they're in a party and she wants to take him out. So, she's very well versed with Bangla. So, her first husband was a Bengali, same, that's where it comes. Otherwise, he was a Marathi, came from Velinka family in Indore. Though Kripa's letters were typically in English, at times only the melodramatic tones of a Tagore heroine were adequate to her passion, full of spiritual and erotic hyperbole. Roping the poet into the court script, she copied a long poem, Tomar Amar Milan Hobe Bolo, about the eternal universal time experienced in a lover's rendezvous at night. In another letter, she copied out the erotic song, Maharaj Ek Saje Ela Hirdoy Puro Majhe. In a half-written note in Bangla, she composed her own fantasy of her romantic assignation. Maharaj ebar cholun, ভদ্রলোকরা বাড়ি থেকে যাবেন না, আমাদেরই যেতে হবে। আপনি কি এত রাতে বেড়ে টেনে নিয়ে যেতে আমার খারাপ লাগছে, কিন্তু উপায় কি? আপনার নাম দিয়েছি, পছন্দ হয়েছে? Maharaj, it is time to go. This is surrounded by too many people and she wants time out with him. And she's writing this. Maharaj, it's time to go. The gentleman refuses to leave the house. There are some guests who refuses to leave. So we'll have to depart. I do not like to drag you out at night like this, but when we do, that's the name I have given you. Do you like? She pledged herself to him completely with the title, Maharaj, আমার যে কি ভাষায় বলবো আমি বুঝতে পারি না, কত কি বলবো এত প্রাণে ভরা যে ভাষা পাই না Maharaj. My Maharaj, what language can I use? I don't understand. Tell me what to say. My heart is so full that words fail, Maharaj. So she was like an ultimate letter writer. In fact, her letters should be taught in literature class how to write love letters. She is a remarkable love letter writer.
Then we have time for one question.
Inspired you to write this book on LK? And sorry, just a continuation. The two books that you've written are so different in genre. So I'm just curious to know.
Yeah. In a way they are distant traditional Hindi world. One is a very progressive, it was a man who leads the progressive movement. He is the father of modernism of Hindi literature. So in a way it's a Hindi world, two different worlds. And as for how he got into Agge, I always wondered why no one is writing on Agge. There's one biography in Hindi by Ram Kamala, which is kind of controlled biography. It was released on his 75th birth anniversary. It has a lot of missing things. And it just so happened that I was meeting Basda Dalme, Ila's younger sister, who's in Berkeley for many, many years. I said, why there is no biography of Agge? And I would love to write it. She said, why don't you write it? I said, how will I write it? There are no papers. She said, just wait. And she called the trust, which again created a trust in his lifetime, called Vatsal Nidhi, which became custodian of his papers. So after his death, Ila managed it. Then Ila unfortunately had cancer, and she also didn't survive for long. She died in 2002. Since then, Dr. Karan Singh and others run this trust. So she immediately got me access. Once he saw the papers, I said, look, I'm hooked. Yeah, so then there were so many myths about him that there's never a consensus on Agge. I doubt even if this book helps any consensus, but yes, it's an effort.
So my question is I get it that he's this very intelligent and charming person and stuff, but don't you at the back of my mind I have this question, don't you think men are generally like that, we are less expressive in terms of showing our love and stuff? Men are in general less expressive in showing love than comparatively to the women.
Well, men,
Yeah.
gay is another level. It's not at all extreme.
Yeah, so that's what I'm trying to,
And yet women are going crazy.
yeah,
about
that's what I'm trying to say. So women are, like, not to generalize, but then, isn't that like, sort of a fact that I'm trying not to.
Maybe you feel like that, like for yourself.
हाँ वही no not like for myself but in general ये मतलब वो अपन देखते हैं कि मतलब women are more sacrificing in terms of to just make things work no matter how bad like it is.
But that's also a world that has been created by men, right? Women are very sacrificing, so let them sacrifice all the time. You know? That's again our world. Is our vision. We have created women कि यार इनका काम ही sacrifice करना.
So that's what I'm saying. It's wrong, no?
Yeah, it is wrong, and that's what we have given. I mean, it's all there. You know, he's extractive, or as she was saying, you know, there is a problem with him. So that's all there in the book about his problems with women. Yeah.
Yeah, everyone will get a copy, and you definitely will read it, and then you'll get more of an insight. Just one more. Okay.
I have not read the book yet, but when you went into it, it's just that from what I've heard so far, knowing who Agay was, I just appreciate you being writing this and yet being so non-judgmental about it.
Yeah.
I think that's an art which you've done exceptionally well. I mean, especially 5 years into this, and yet, I mean, and facing everybody's question, and I mean, this is just a
because once you get judgment, see, there has to be some guy. I have to. But in the process, it's not that, you know, there can be great writers who are wretched human beings.
Yeah.
You know, Picasso, T.S. Eliot, you name it. If they were existing now, the cancel culture that exists now, all of them, people would stop reading them, you know. Eliot was completely, I mean, it's kind of things he did to his wife, or Picasso to his many wives. And it's true all over. So, as a biographer, the thing is that you just write, just put it there. Don't brush anything under the carpet. Because see, whatever I might have said, still it will not take away the greatness of Agay. It will only make you, the idea is to humanize you, not turn him into some kind of god, you know, who did nothing wrong and he was born as a gift to literature and all blah blah, you know, all those mumbo jumbo about people. Don't get into that.
Can't thank you enough, Akshay. And the reading was also brilliant.
Thank you for having me.
And also what you said about being a biographer, I have to salute that. Not to have prejudice, not to be judgmental, is the sign of being a true artist. So we have to thank you for your contribution to the world of literature. Tamanna, I don't know what to say. Thank you. I'm going to request Shan Bhatnagar to please come up and give the mementos to Akshay and Tamanna. Yeah, I'm going to do that. Thank you everyone for being with us this evening and also listening with such rapt attention. I think that's something great about Jaipur. I think all of you come with so much energy, warmth and affection. I'm constantly grateful for that. You know what the rule is, just pick up your copies and get them signed. And we'll see you next time.